And we have a panel, originally had 4, but now we have 3. One couldn't make it, but he sent me his written answer. So we have Chris, we have Lisa, we have Elaine. So the topic today is my first professional job experience. It's more referring to the first job after you graduate from college. So, I'm recording, but it's okay because the reason I'm recording, some of the college students already went back to school because of the semester system. Not like some of you are here because you're important. So what we are hoping to get out of this is to get some feedback from those people who have worked for several years. We have people work for 2 months to 10 years. So hopefully that will give you some broad spectrum of input, and also feel free to ask additional questions besides the prepared questions, and feel free to share your own experience as well. Okay? So I'm going to start to ask the questions. And also I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves during the question. So the first question is, how did you find your first job? So let's start with Elaine.
So I'm Elaine. I found my first job through a friend I knew from church, who knew the person in the department that I'm working for.
Okay. So maybe introduce your major, your background, how many years you've been working?
I was a biology major at UC Berkeley, and I work as a pharmacy technician at County Hospital.
Lisa?
Hi, so my name is Lisa Liu, and I graduated from Berkeley with a business degree, and so I've been working for a little over 10 years. And how I found my first job, actually I was lucky because at the time when I graduated that year, I think it was the market was kind of hot, so the job actually found me, meaning that the career fair, so it's actually kind of all pick. Anyone could get easily, I don't know, 3 to 5 offers at a time. So it's a different world.
Okay.
Chris?
Yeah.
I'm Chris. I just graduated. I did with my master's in June. I did a bachelor's in symbolic systems, which is like interdisciplinary cognitive science, psychology, linguistics, computer science. Basically stuff to do like minds and computers. And then I did my master's in computer science, and I just finished with that in June. And I'm working at a software startup now in San Jose called Compass Labs, and it's about like trying to improve ad targeting online by taking what you say on Twitter and Facebook and figuring out when you're about to buy something or what you might want to buy. So basically stalk people and target ads. So it's not like necessarily socially beneficial, but it's really interesting and it's kind of a novel field. And I found it because when I was in school, I was looking for a part-time job, and so through a friend of a friend, I like hooked up with another startup, and I did like a little bit of work for them. But that didn't really pan out. But a guy in that company introduced me to a guy who's now my supervisor, and so I interviewed there, and that's how I got it. But in general, like just to expand a little, I think career fair, like I found some interview opportunities with career fairs, which are really good. So definitely take advantage of that. And then also, if you do a little bit of research on your own as to like what companies are interesting your field or have positions that you're interested in. I did a lot of straight up cold emailing as well, where I just was like, hi, I have these qualifications and I like your company for these reasons. So I did that too, and I got some interviews out of that. So I think that's the best way actually, because like you're going out and finding something that's like very tailored that you know you really want to do. So I think that's a good idea.
Great. So the next question is, what were some most valuable things you have learned through your interviewing process, and how did you negotiate a salary, and how did you find out what is appropriate range of salary to ask for? So let me read Neil's answer first. Neil's background is he graduated from UCLA, majoring in electrical engineering and with computer engineering option in 2008. So Neil has been working for 2 years. And he's currently working for a company called 3PAR, which is now recently being bought by Dell, and he's working as a software developer. So he said that the most valuable thing he learned from the interviewing, especially he's trying to find a new job now. So he felt that investigating what the company does, what kind of product they sell, is the most important, because some people, they don't do the homework. That will help to differentiate yourself. And also, he suggests in the interview, be honest with what you do and you do know and you don't know, because people can easily detect dishonesty during the interview. And also, make sure that this is what he said, mirror the interviewer's personality or the way he or she talks. So it's kind of a, melting with the person's personality and communication skill in order to be able to be on the same page to connect. Neil said he didn't do a good job in negotiating salary well because he did not do enough homework. And he would recommend a website such as Glassdoor.com or other miscellaneous websites. So let me turn the question back to Elaine. So how about what are some things you learned in the interview process?
I also thought that researching about the company is very important, that you know their missions and you know their values and who they're serving. Because sometimes your interviewer will talk a little bit about the company and you want to be able to respond to that and not just leave the conversation hanging there. So that they might be impressed that you can actually respond and say, oh yeah, I do think your company is doing well in this area. I also think that being honest is very important. If you don't know how to answer a question or how to solve a problem, you can tell them, but I would suggest backing it up with a response that would tell them about your thought process and how you hope to go about finding the answer. And another thing I would say, make eye contact with everyone. Sometimes on a panel interview, there'll be one person asking you the question, but in fact, everyone will be listening for your answer, and they are observing your body movements. So don't think like someone they look young or they're not there to really interview you. Still make eye contact with them and give them respect and acknowledge that they are there.
Lisa? Well, particularly, did you learn something through salary negotiations?
Well, the first job really, right out of college, I don't think I negotiated. It was more, so I did, the first job was doing accounting. I was an auditor. I worked for one of the big 4 accounting firms, so KPMG, not a radio station, did a lot. And so I think the salary was kind of set. Every firm was about the same. And then the signing bonus were all the same, so we didn't really have too much room to negotiate at the time. Also because being a firm, they know that you want to get there to get licensed. What happened is to be a CPA, you need to have hours, the firm sign off on your hours, so they tend to pay you a little bit lower to know that you want your hours signed off. So I didn't really do a whole lot of that. Yeah. But then from the interview perspective, I do want to, want to add, because I actually did national recruiting for my company, and also when I currently work for Cisco, and I do a lot of interviews as well. So definitely, I always say, definitely be yourself, but at the same time, the interview is a show. I mean, it is. You want to put your best, foot forward. You want to practice at home. And a lot of times I tell people when you go to interviews, there shouldn't be a question, almost shouldn't be a question that you don't expect coming and that you shouldn't have the answer for. You might act like you know how to answer for it, but then you really should have the answer for it. So it's really just talking with a lot of people. And how do you find those questions is that you talk with people who might have worked in the company or in that field and say, what kind of questions do people ask in the interview setting, right? And of course, do not lie, definitely do not lie. And like everyone else said, do your research. A lot of questions that I tend to ask is, do you have any question about my company? And then it's the worst when someone said no. Because usually, say, for example, a 30-minute interview, I say 10 minutes to introduce myself and what I do. Maybe the next 10 minutes to, imagine the 30 minutes, 10 minutes to ask questions. Last 10 minutes, I ask the person to ask me a question. And so worse when I say, if you have a question, they have nothing. And then, so I'm thinking as an interviewer, I have 10 minutes to and I start talking about my life, my kids, and I don't want to do that. So really research the company and really ask them questions. And also, you don't have to paint a perfect picture. I think a lot of times you get asked, like, oh, what are your strengths? And I hate it when people say, oh, I'm a perfectionist.
That was my standard answer.
Yeah. I mean, it is true, but at the same time, on the other side, okay, that's not true, right? I mean, you could say, maybe I tend to focus too much on the details, and I need to look at the bigger picture. And the way, yes, that can show that you're a perfectionist, perhaps, too. But at the same time, you really have some kind of weakness, too. But then at the same time, I'm not saying you should really tell them, like, your worst weakness. I mean, I can't wake up in the morning, I'm late all the time. I mean, don't say that, right? So there is some discretion that you want to practice. But I think the best thing is just research, do a lot of research. Yeah.
So Chris, your field is engineer, so did you get a lot of challenging technical questions asking you to actually do solving technical questions during the interview? Was that challenging, and how did you prepare for them?
Yeah, so I mean, like, my first few kind of technical interviews where they asked me coding questions were pretty much like, because I didn't know like that whole entire thing was all about. And so you really have to, like, just because you have technical skills in your field doesn't necessarily mean that like they translate into an interview setting. It's kind of like how even though you can be good at something, like you're not going to necessarily do well on the SAT because the SAT is essentially its own game, right? So interview questions and a technical setting, they're like their own game as well. So you have to actually practice interview technical questions that specifically get asked in an interview format. So you want to like go ask people. Hopefully you have some older friends in the same field. If not, then you can, I don't know, try to like friend of a friend your way into knowing one of those people, or just talk to a professor, maybe, if you know a professor well, which most people don't, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, you should, like, what I was going to say is just be aware when you're going in terms of like knowing and expecting what questions are coming. For me, a lot of the time, I would try to determine beforehand, hey, is this going to be a technical interview? I would ask the recruiter. If so, then I would go spend the time to brush up. Otherwise, if it's just like, get to know me, or like, I don't know, understand more about me, then I wouldn't have to bother investing my time. Although technically, you should be prepared at all times for that sort of thing. What I would generally do, actually, if you're going to do a bunch of technical interviews, is line up first a couple interviews with companies you don't necessarily care too much about, so you have some time to like adjust your brain into the game of doing these particular technical questions. And then by the time the third interview rolls around, like your brain is in the right kind of mode for answering those sorts of technical interviews. That's what I would say. What else?
Maybe we'll just jump on to the next question.
Actually, before we do that, too, like, I'm just curious, out of curiosity, like, what is the split of the different majors
Or like fields, yeah.
fields?
I feel like it's really specific to our
Yeah.
fields.
Right.
So maybe starting from this end, maybe each one of us just briefly mention the field you're focusing on. Which field you're focusing on?
I'm majoring in biological sciences. Neurobiology.
Your biologist.
Majoring in economics. Exercise biology. Design and architecture.
Social psychology, biology, business economics, chemistry,
Landscape architecture.
economics, minor math, and computer programming.
Physics.
Electrical engineering.
Right. Biological engineering.
You're not looking.
I know. Yeah, computer engineering.
That's international business.
Bioscience. Fashion design.
Just the cool one.
No, it's really cool. I major in computer science.
Economics, but I've never worked in the field.
Chris is a pilot, so if you like to fly, you can talk to him. Psychology.
But save your complaints, please. I'm just not terrible experience.
Well, I want something outside of negotiation, so a lot of times departments will, if, you know, hopefully they're good, they'll keep on file on what jobs people end up in their department were doing and what the salary was. And so I did a lot of lookups on things like median salary numbers for people with my degree and in my field. Because my department actually does a really good job of tracking all that stuff. So that's what I use as a baseline for my salary negotiation. Yeah. Oh, in terms of asking about the company, yeah, this is a time for you to, like, I think when I first started out, I was like, well, okay, like, it's a company, like, that's cool, like, what am I supposed to ask? So you typically want to ask, I guess, things like what direction they're going in, or like, as you can ask company level questions, like what they plan to do in the next year or something, or you can ask, like, position level questions, which is like, what is it like to do, or like kind of what's the organizational hierarchy, who are you going to report to, like what kind of projects, what's the timeline on certain projects, stuff like that, so you can ask more details about the position. Those are like some ideas for things to ask about.
All right, thank you.